It's the final one for the week. Welcome to the Friday edition of Business Morning Live on Channels Television. I'm Ini John McQuarrie. Let's explore the world of business for the next 55 minutes. Let's start with oil prices. Extended its losses today, heading for a 4% weekly drop, and burdened by the prospect of rate hikes, weaker global growth, and COVID-19 lockdowns in China, which has hurt demand, even as the European Union weighs on a ban on Russian oil. Brent crude futures were down $1.17 to $107.16 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures declined $1.17 to $102.62 a barrel. Well, the demand outlook in China, which is the world's biggest oil importer, continues to weigh on the market. The Shanghai authorities launched a new round of citywide testing, and one resident their 3-week lockdown would be lifted only in batches once transmission is stamped out. We come home to Nigeria now, where data from the central bank reveals that external reserves may have returned to the growth path as it rose by $243.83 million in 19 days. The movement in reserves shows that the value rose from $39.54 billion as of the 1st of April to $39.78 billion as of the 19th of April. Well, we have weighing in on this senior economist and partner at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje, joining us from Abuja, though virtually. Good morning, Mr. Alaje. Good to have you on the show.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for having me.
Great. So this is the second time we're seeing gains on the reserve. Do you think this has come to stay?
Well, I think Central Bank and the Monetary Policy Committee, some of the decisions taken have started to yield result. And I can say, yes, if we don't have any major disruption, we might continue to see this upward growth in the foreign reserve. One, because with the central bank policy of repatriating nearly 200 billion US dollars and giving extra 65 naira on every single dollar deposited or exchanged through the official window, have started yielding meaningful results. So that's what I have observed. And I also think that we can even do more when we start oil swap in exchange for PMS and so on and so forth that NNPC and other agencies of government are practicing. So I think it has come to stay because we have started seeing, just after that policy was made by the central bank, we have started seeing significant results in that regards.
And yes, the World Bank is criticizing the CBN, on FX policy.
Yes, it's obvious World Bank is criticizing CBN, but central bank needs to respond with a lot of care. If we decide to float our FX rate, I can tell you that inflation that is already 15.9% may go as high as 18 or 20%. So it's a tough decision to be made by Monetary Policy Committee, and more importantly, by the central bank and the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's better for us to his exchange, to his naira with not just suddenly, so that because we'll not be able to manage it. When we say we decide to float, we want to do what parallel market rate is doing, or we just want for demand and for the force of demand and supply to abdicate price, we're going to have a lot of issues in our hand, starting with even further depletion of exchange rate, further fall, again, inflationary pressures to come, and so on and so forth. The issues are just too numerous to handle. Recall that in 1986, we had similar advice by IMF. Nigeria adopted it. And because of poor management, policy management, and poor implementation of policy, even though some countries made the same, but we should realize that economy does not stand on one leg. Inflation concerns is not just what monetary authorities should focus, even though that's a core mandate, but what is fueling inflation in Nigeria, what is fueling poor exchange rate in Nigeria today is one of major reasons, one of the several reasons affecting exchange rate is low exports. Our exports is very poor, is very low, and to a large extent, I can say crude oil takes the lead. Apart from that, we also have poor policy for the environment, weak environment for production, which is affecting. I strongly believe that we can improve the environment, the policy environment, we can improve more. But to follow World Bank, hook, line, and sinker, it will be very disastrous for us as a nation.
Yeah, I know you said that it's the policy, and I believe you were referring to mostly the RT 200 raised to $200 billion raise. But the figure also shows that about 90% of the gain in the reserve comes from the oil sector, and we're trying to improve the non-oil sector. So when are we expecting inputs from the non-oil sector?
Well, the non-oil sector is going to be impossible if we don't have the environment to improve non-oil exports. Number one is power. Number two is factory, manufacturing. Any country that wants to grow non-oil sector, as we are hoping to do, must ensure that our factory component, and I mean manufacturing component of our GDP, is not less than 50%. What we have right now is less than 30%. There is just no way we improve manufacturing sector or export without having adequate power supply, and there will not be stronger and better policies to support export. This is what has happened. Even though those who are within the oil sector have seen opportunity to bring their fund to Nigeria and get a little bit more, which is what anybody who wants to maximize gain would have done, in that regard. So we might not be doing well in non-oil sector now, but we can get more even in oil. Again, we have also seen some level of reduction in oil theft, even though that is still going on within the Niger Delta, but it was not as bad as we had it, I think, last month or thereabout, because the report has that a significant proportion was stolen.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Laji, for sharing your thoughts with us. We do hope, as you have said, that we are back on the growth path for our reserve, because we have not even hit that $40 billion yet, which is supposed to be the beginning of the real growth. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, April is Financial Literacy Month, and there are questions as to what's the level of knowledge of an average Nigerian on finance, budgeting, investments, credit, insurance, and the financial system. We have Folusho Badamusi. She's the Executive Director of Junior Achievement Nigeria. She's very active in this area. I've had her on a show not so long ago, but she's here again since we're celebrating the month. Good to see you again, Folusho. Good morning.
Good morning, Ini. Thanks for having me.
Good. So when we're talking about being knowledgeable in finance, budgets, and the financial system, insurance, for an average person, someone who is not a professional in the area, what should I know?
Okay, so when we're talking about being knowledgeable, it really just means having at least a basic understanding, right, of what personal finance, budgeting is. Also having the ability to understand different financial terms, so things like insurance, things like managing debt, things like savings, all those different things are actually extremely important as individuals, get older, as they work, as they live, because as you know, there are actually different parts of financial literacy, and there's also different principles that everybody should know, right? So for instance, we should know what it means to earn. We should know how much it is we're spending. We should have an idea of how much it is that we need to save for the kind of future that we want. We should have ideas about different things that we can invest in. We should know when, if ever, we should even borrow. And we should also know how to protect our money, right? So these are some of the different things that individuals should know when it comes to financial literacy.
And, well, unfortunately, a CBN report reveals that about 53.4% of adults in Nigeria do not know or have a rough idea of what they've spent in the past week, or over 50% know how much money is available. How important really is it? Do I have a book or have a notepad where when I spend, maybe I buy airtime, I put it somewhere? How important is this? How should we go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the statistics are very interesting. In fact, I personally question if they're even, completely accurate, because I feel like the percentage might even be higher than what that report says. There's a quote by Warren Buffett that I really like. It says, "Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving," right? So ultimately, many of us need to understand what it actually means to budget, because budgeting means that you have an idea of how much it is you're actually spending on different things. So not having an understanding of, for instance, how much you're spending on airtime, how much you're spending on data, how much you're spending on food, how much you're spending on power, especially with the inflation rates that we just heard at 15.9%, where everything has actually increased in price. Last week, the cost of meat and pepper at the market is different from what it is this week. So we actually need to be very intentional in this particular season about budgeting and about saving. So what does that mean, to your question? It does mean that we should track. And what does tracking mean? Tracking should not scare us. You don't need to get any fancy device or any fancy app. You can just write it in the notepad of your phone, or you can have a notepad, like you said, a physical notepad where you're writing what you're spending every day. And at the end of the week, you can actually add up what you spent on data, what you spent on airtime, what you spent on food, what you spent on all the different things that you spend money on in your life. Because also, daily expenses differ for different people. And so we can't say that, this is what everybody is going to be doing every day. It really depends on what you do as an individual. Do you have a family? Are you single? And so on and so forth. So we just need to find a place that we're making a note of every single thing we're spending, and then we're adding that up, and then we can then make a comparison with how much we're actually earning and determine, okay, can I even afford some of the things that I've been able to afford in the past? I think something that the inflation rate has taught many of us in this time is that there are many things that you could actually afford that you might not be able to afford anymore. So the question then is, should you continue to spend money on certain things? Do you need to find ways to make more income so that you can afford those things if they are things that you must spend money on? So it's really us just not being ignorant of the importance of us having the tracking of the things that we spend our money on, and then being intentional about being able to really decide, okay, should I be spending my money on these things? Can I even afford these things? Keeping in mind that we're currently at a season in Nigeria where the inflation rate is getting a bit out of hand.
Yeah, well, inflation everywhere is getting out of hand at this time.
Yeah,
but talking about, yes, it is. So talking about saving now, a lot of us know to save in the bank. Now, apart from the investments, we'll get to that later. And then what rights do people have? Because recently, I don't know if you've been on social media recently, you will see a lot of complaints. People say they're being debited. People say they are being charged. Now, of course, the CBN has the right and has given the guidelines, as to charges of transactions. What rights do people have with their banks? At what point do we get a situation where banks can report, freeze, or block an account? And what can people do to protect themselves?
Okay, so I think that there's two parts to your question, right? And the first part is me as an individual that owns a bank account and the kind of charges I'm getting, and sometimes feeling like you're getting charges that you don't understand. Ignorance is never an excuse, and I know that many of us actually don't really know what we're signing up for sometimes when we open up different types of bank accounts. But it is very important that if you don't understand what the charges are, that you actually ask your bank, right? You need to ask questions. So if you are constantly getting charges and those charges don't make sense to you, please ask. And a lot of banks will actually take the time to explain to you what those charges are. I know that there are some charges that the banks have to do by regulation. It's not really, a choice that they have, but it's also something that needs to be explained to people like you and I who might have just opened up a bank account and don't understand what the charges may be. Now, the second part of your question, which goes to, I think that you were asking about the
limits and rights, and then freezing and reporting of transactions.
Yeah, so the bank actually has a great responsibility to the regulator, which is the CBN, right? So the CBN can, ask banks about accounts at any point in time. And nowadays, because of a lot of interesting transactions on the internet, because of the fact that we're in the information age, and there are certain types of people that are making money in, I want to call them illegal ways. There are some things that are happening at a lot of banks where sometimes CBN and even the law enforcement officials, have to go to the banks and ask them about certain individuals. And that is all within the rights of the law enforcement officials and the CBN. It's actually not just in Nigeria, it's actually a worldwide thing. That's why, there's a lot of acts, against anti-money laundering and so many different acts that, like you said about inflation, it's not just a Nigerian thing, it's actually a worldwide thing. So yeah, there are many questions that can be asked about your personal account, especially if it is flagged as an account that perhaps there's fraud on it or an account that has been engaging in illegal activities.
Yeah, and I know that recently, I think about 2 weeks ago, some banks were actually fined by the CBN because they did not report crypto transactions, which, the CBN has already talked against even before now.
Exactly. And, that's why it is important for us not to be too ignorant on certain things, right? So you cannot really get upset with the CBN or get upset with the banks when there are certain things that, for instance, a country has deemed as illegal and those things are happening. The bank must report to the CBN. And unfortunately for those banks that didn't report it, they then have to pay a large fine.
And then, so let's look at the investment now. I mean, as you noted, these days they are very interesting times. Sometimes you have some very mouth-watering promises on investment, So how can, an average person differentiate between the real thing and the fluke?
Amy, that's such a great question. And I find that when it comes to investment, one of the greatest policies that you can have in your own head is if it looks too good to be true, or if the return is too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. I've seen so many, investment vehicles or offers where when you look at what they are promising you, if you just look at it and it doesn't make sense to you, then more than likely it doesn't make sense. I think that investing is one of those things that we have to develop patience for. Investing is something that you really have to have that mindset that it's going to take some time for you to maybe start to make the kind of returns that you desire. So the returns might start out, a bit low, but over time it grows. The summary for me for that, honestly, is if it looks too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. Now, fortunately as well, in this day and age, we do have the internet, so we can go online and, do some research on some of the companies that are offering us maybe certain investment opportunities or certain investment packages. Also, every financial institution is supposed to be regulated by the CBN. So if the organization that is coming to you to ask you to invest is not one that is regulated by the CBN, then you might want to think twice about investing with them. The other thing also is that, we all have different risk appetites, right? Some people have a high risk appetite, some have a low, some have a medium. When you are investing, it's very important that you determine what your risk appetite is. Do not follow your friend that has a high risk appetite if you know that your own risk appetite is low, because your friend might not mind losing money, because they do high risk, which comes with higher returns, whereas you, with a low risk, might then get very upset, if you lose that money. We should also aim to invest money that if we do lose it, we will not be too upset, especially if you're just starting out with investing, because investing is something that we need to develop a culture for, but it's also something that can burn you very easily. And if you do get burnt, there's a chance that you might decide, I'm never investing my money again, So I would always say, try to start with the low risk type of investments, do the investments that it might take longer to get your returns. And remember that if it looks like it's too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, about that thing that they said, and which you just, don't invest money that you cannot afford to lose. At what point do I now invest for a second stream of income? For instance, I'm working here, I earn a salary, but I want something to buffer my income, So at what point do I say, oh, this is good, I want something that I can use as a second stream of income, this is good enough, I can put a bulk of maybe 1 month's earning, 2 months or savings over time. At what point do I take that decision?
So I think that for decisions that have to do with your investment money becoming like a second income, right, as you said, so something that maybe can give you returns that you can kind of spend on your day-to-day, as an example. So what we spoke about earlier, like your budgeting. So money that is almost just like, free-ish money, because you can then use that money that you're using something else to gain from to spend. I think for those ones, you should just go with the low risk investments, and you should definitely make sure that you're going with accredited financial institutions. Now, even within the accredited financial institutions, they will tell you the different levels. They will tell you the low, the medium, and the high. And usually what happens is that even if you lose money with the high, they will tell you the minimum beyond which you cannot lose money. So I think that for those types of investments, you need to be extremely careful, and you need to go with either extremely trusted organizations, or if it's a person. So I know that quite a few people have, started doing things like pulling funds together as maybe like friends or groups, right? Make sure that the terms are clear, right? So make sure that this is something that has an agreement, the terms are clear, and that you understand what it means. So for instance, read the fine print. The fine print always says things like, okay, this is the minimum amount of money that you would get back in the event that this investment fails. You should know what that is, and you should be convinced and comfortable that if you only get that minimum back, you would be okay. So the summary of it is that you should make sure that you read the fine print, and you should also make sure that you do it with accredited institutions, such that if anything happens, you will definitely get something back. And be sure that the minimum that you get back, as written in the fine print, is something that you are comfortable with in the long run.
And I guess also that the process, of getting a payback if something happens, I'm talking of engaging legal services, that should also be spelled out from the beginning, because I think back here in Nigeria, unlike places like the US, we trust our word of mouth so much that when something happens, there's no proof, to say we agreed this and we agreed we're going to do this. So I guess that is something else. That's something else we should have at the back.
And you know what? It's really interesting that we seem to trust word of mouth so much, especially when we see many people that have been burnt. And so that's why I think it's one of those things also that we cannot be ignorant about. Even if it's you and a friend, or you and a group of friends, put up an agreement, like a draft agreement, between all of you, and let everybody sign, so that there's no stories at the end of the day of somebody saying, oh, I didn't know that this is what I was getting myself into, or I didn't know that this was the minimum. Let it be clear. And also, Ini, I think just to kind of close on that is, make sure that you understand what you're signing or what is happening. If you don't understand it, I would say that you should not do it. And you should go and do it with somebody or an organization that you actually understand what it is that they're doing. So if you don't understand what the investment is, what the transaction is, please do not do it, no matter how attractive the returns look.
Don't be greedy.
Don't be greedy.
Don't be greedy. And all of this is another way that, according to the World Bank, extreme poverty can be reduced in Nigeria and other countries. So we do hope that more people...
Yeah, and that is also why at Junior Achievement Nigeria, we spend so much time teaching the youth about financial literacy. Because the truth of the matter is that countries that have more financially literate people are doing better than countries that do not. So it's actually very important for all of us, myself and yourself included, even to, teach our children, teach our loved ones, teach our nieces, our nephews, give them an idea of what financial literacy is from a young age. Let them know what it means to earn, what it means to save, what it means to spend, what it means to donate. Let them understand those basic things about financial literacy and budgeting as well, so that as they get older, they do not overdo, as it is.
Yes, I like the overdue part. Thank you so much for Olusegun Gbedamosi, Executive Director, Junior Achievement Nigeria. Thank you so much for that enlightenment, and we do hope that it goes far down there with our viewers. The cost of producing a pot of jollof rice for a family of 5, that's the average family size according to the National Bureau of Statistics, is calculated using the prices of these ingredients and then used as proxy to gauge food inflation across the country. So the cost of rice, curry, thyme, seasoning, groundnuts, oil, turkey or chicken, beef, pepper, tomatoes, salt, and onions. They are the commodities that make up that pot of jollof rice that you enjoy. And we're using that to discuss inflation index at this time. We have Gloria Tim, she's analyst at SBM Intelligence. She carried out this research, and she joins us now to tell us. Hi, Gloria, you must like jollof rice a lot.
Yes, I do. And most Nigerians like jollof rice, just like me.
Okay. So is that why you used it as a measurement? So tell us about your findings.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we found out was that in this quarter, the cost of making a pot of jollof rice has increased by 7.3% from last October, and a lot of um, a lot of geopolitical issues are concerned or are the reasons for these. So, for instance, in the southeast, the sit-at-home also impacted the cost of food, and in the north and places like the FCT, insecurity is still a major issue there. That's that's causing the cost of jollof rice to increase. Other issues around include storage issues, food wastages, and a number of those.
All right, so we do know that with the increase in prices, there are compromises by consumers. What are some of those compromises, and how does it affect, of course, we have the issue of nutrients that is needed for the body, and, you know, and of course, when you don't have the right nutrients, you're talking of a threat to good health. So what are the compromises that some consumers have been making, and what is the cost of that compromise that they are making?
One of them is that Nigerians are abandoning quality for quantity. So in the course of our research, we found out that people were not so much concerned with the quality of what they are eating. What they're concerned about is, you know, the quantity. They just want to feed. They just want to eat. It's not like okay, I want turkey, I want this. In fact, one of the people we quoted in the report said she had long ago removed turkey from her list of protein, and you know, she'd moved to chicken, and then she'd moved to fish, and she has even moved to egg, and the cost of egg has also increased.
Exactly.
So customers yes, so that they're kind of, you know, running out of alternatives.
Mm. So this is just one way that the NBS measures inflation. And this has been a conversation that has been ongoing. The basket of commodities used to measure inflation. Do you see the inflation figures, you know, as capturing the realities of our time, you know, or do you think there's a need to rejig that basket, the content of that basket that is used to capture inflation?
I think that the baskets that are used in measuring inflation are not arbitrary baskets. So they are definite measures, and these are measures that that are in line with some of the measures that Nigerians use to buy food, sort of Derika and all of that. So I feel like the measures are sufficient, and they're good enough. And why we have the SBM Jollof index and the way we measure it is because we want to see the real changes, you know, month by month. We want to see what food ingredient changed, and you know, it's more relatable, and it's more like what the average Nigerian feels.
The issue of a food import bill, which the CBN says has risen by 45%. How much of this content of this pot of jollof contributes to this food import bill?
Okay, so one of the things that has risen is protein, like sources of protein. And, you know, in our jollof index, we have turkey, we have chicken, and we have beef. So these sources of protein has really increased. And apart from that, you know, the alternatives that people are now using, like the egg too, has really gone up. So that's like it.
So now, what from your perspective stops Nigeria from, I mean, why can't we have our own poultry, our own protein? What stops us? Even when we talk about the rice, you go to a lot of homes today, you still see the imported rice. And yet the government has been talking about homegrown rice, local rice available. We've had in different states, different initiatives. What from your findings is stopping Nigerians from really looking inwards for these staple foods that we actually need?
Okay, one of that is insecurity. There's so much insecurity in the north, and arable lands are no longer cultivated. Apart from that, we have to move away from just supporting smallholder farmers, which is like the policy initiative of the government. We have to move to mechanized agriculture. We have a population that is growing at 2.5. So, smallholder farmers cannot catch up with that population rate. So we have to look at, mechanizing agriculture, making food available at large quantities like it is in other countries. Apart from that, we also have to, improve on our storage, our storage facilities. Some of the items that of food produce that we eventually make are wasted, and they are wasted as a result of the lack of storage. So those are the things that the government should consider away from, their policies of supporting smallholder farmers.
What about individuals? So we're not leaving everything at the doorstep of the government. What about, private investors? Are they doing enough when we talk about storage, preservation, logistics? Are the private sector, is the private sector doing enough, to develop these areas?
I would say that we don't have a lot of private sector investment in this area. And I think the government shares the blame because, when there's a need for a thing like that, what you do is that you incentivize people to take up that, those kind of, ventures. So I don't think there's a lot of incentives for people to take up storage businesses in Nigeria. So, for instance, if you look at, I'm talking about the level of the individual now. So, if you look at what most individuals use in storage, it's refrigerators, and you can see what's happened in like the last month in terms of the cost of diesel, the cost of fuel scarcity, and all of that. So, the private individuals need to be incentivized to be able to go into these businesses.
All right, Gloria, thank you so much. Gloria Tim is analyst with SBM Intelligence, and she did that research on the cost of a pot of jollof rice. Thank you so much for your time on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Let's go away from the jollof market now to the equities and the fixed income market. And it's been a green week in the equities market in Nigeria. I think 2 weeks running now, Anita. This has been a very long, high, bullish run.
That's right, Ini. Just when the month of April started a little bit in the red, but we've seen, just like what you mentioned, 2 weeks of gains. And so far this week, we've had more than 400 billion naira gained at the equities market by investors. And this comes largely on the back of, bargain hunting for some of the bellwether stocks that we have. Last week, it was MTN Nigeria. Then about 2 days ago, it was the shares of Airtel Africa. And then, of course, now we're seeing the banks doing the magic. Now, this is how it closed this is how it ended at the close of Thursday's trading session. 45.91 billion naira is what the amount that was gained yesterday. And of course, take a look at the equities market value. The total value is nearing the 26 trillion naira level, while the all-share index crossed into the 48,000 level, a level that we have not seen for a very long time so far. And then that's about 0.18% in increase when you take a look at the amount at which the market rallied. Now, over to the sectoral performance. Green arrows is what you see across board there. The banking sector, like I mentioned, was up 0.51%. Insurance, although that has a small capitalization, but it also recorded quite an increase there. And then the largest there was seen on the oil and gas counter, so it came on the back of the bellwether stocks there. But GT Co was very much to be thanked for the rally that we saw in the market at the close of Thursday's trading session, as well as Zenith Bank. And so far, within this month, the gain has been increased to about 2.7%. Then for the year, we're up about 12.9%, or just approximately 13% so far for the year. So it's a green number, or a green color for the market so far. And then, of course, the sectoral performance, it shows you that the investors are really keen on buying equities at the NGX. And the market breadth was also positive. So green is all what you have across board. 29 gainers against 9 losers so far at the close of Thursday's trading session. But in terms of the value was down by 14.91%, while the deals was up by 5.93%. So far, the market is still in the green, like I mentioned. And for the top trades, we had custodian insurance being the major contributor to the value, while the shares of Nigerian breweries was the most traded by value at 733.01 million units, naira. So then let's move over to the smaller unlisted securities market. It recorded some rebound there. 0.36% is what the markets index gained at the close of Thursday's trading session. So we had the volume was up by 10.81%. The value was down by 47.67% at 23.48 million naira, while the total deals executed there, well, it was 12. But when you look at it in contrast to what was traded in the previous day, it was down by 61.29%. We had the gains from Double One, which was recently delisted from the Nigerian exchange, against Lafarge, against the likes of Afriland and Friesland Campina, which were the losers on that space. So moving over to the FT's market. So, but before we go to the fixed income market, let's talk to Richard Akimoladu. He's an equities trader at CSL Stockbrokers Limited. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Thank you, Anita, for having me on your show this morning.
Yeah, I'm sure you traders are smiling once again. The market, of course, is always having a mind of its own. To one day is down, the other day is up, vice versa. So now, what is driving this rebound that we're seeing at the equities market so far in the last 2 weeks?
Thank you once again for that question. So looking at the market from your analysis, it has been a positive news across the board. When you talk about volume, value, year to date, 12.9%. For the week, we are up by 1.4%. And yesterday, the market was up too. And that has been like a 10-day consecutive gain in the market. This positive sentiment can be attributed to, for the Q1, we saw a lot of dividend coming into the market, and that's amount to a lot of liquidity for the market. We are aware that there's a lot of FPI in the market that still have some of their fund in the market. So they get dividend from on these shares, and repatriating this fund has been an issue. So I believe they are bringing back this dividend money back to the market to actually take position. Also, we mentioned that Q1 results will go a long way to determine the direction of the markets. Bearing the fact that there's a lot of local players in the market, and they look at numbers critically this time around. So if you look at the market as I'm talking to you this morning, Q1 result, we've seen Q1 of Lafarge Africa, and that it was a positive, so a very impressive number, and the market has reacted positively to that. Lafarge is trading up by 9% as I'm talking to you this morning. So Q1 results, as we see them coming in, we will see a lot of positive reaction to that. And also, some of this stock has been overbeaten in terms of prices. Their prices are very low. So investors are taking advantage of this low price. So these are some of the things that are bringing this positive sentiment we are seeing in the market lately. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, so we leave it there, and then we keep our eyes out for the markets, or all of the markets, the equities market, the fixed income market, the unlisted securities market, and all of the markets in Nigeria's financial market. So that's it for the market review, Ini. It's green so far.
Thank you so much, Anite. I would like to say that tomorrow at 7 p.m., Capital Markets will be here. We'll give you details of how we traded in the various markets tomorrow at 7 p.m. Of course, that's a crossover to the 48,000 level in the equities. would be a much talked about issue tomorrow. So do join us for Capital Market 7 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much, Anita. Well, in the year of the squeeze, I think it is expected that retail sales will fall. That's the figures that we get from the UK. And we have Juliana joining us now. I guess the question will be, how low did it go, or is it more than forecast? Good morning, Juliana. Tell us about these retail sales that we see. Is it more than was projected?
Good morning, Ini. Yes, it was much more than expected. And as you said, it is the year of the squeeze. And with inflation running at a decade high, there are no surprises, really, that we're seeing retail sales volumes dip in this country. But it was much more than expected. I think the market had put a 0.3% dip in retail sales during the month of March, but it's actually come in at over 1.3%. This has been led by a drop in people purchasing food items and also buying fuel. Fuel dropped by about 4.1% and food dropped about 1.1%. And we've been gradually, since November, seeing the amount of money that people are spending on groceries dip. And this is really because we know consumer habits have changed. Now that restrictions are being lifted, people are spending less time at home cooking large dinners, and they're spending more time outside. But I think the concerns are, what is it likely to be going forward? Because once again, with data from the Office for National Statistics, we're looking back in the rearview mirror. We know that in April, energy bills rose by 54%, and then we also got that hike in national insurance tax. And with lots of people talking about the cost of living crisis, I think consumer confidence is beginning to wane, which is why we're seeing this data revealed today. And
away from that, we see the NHS will be barred from using goods and services linked to slavery or human trafficking. And that's a law that is yet to be introduced. How will this work?
Yeah, absolutely right. This has been described as the most significant shake-up to regulation since the Modern Slavery Act was introduced in this country. We're expecting a vote on the matter next week. And Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, is expected to put this within the Health and Social Bill. And it is all about modern-day slavery, and it's linked to COVID-19 and Britain's purchase, well, NHS England's purchase of PPE, which we know at the height of the pandemic was one of the most sought-after items to protect health workers that were working to save lives at the time. And £5.8 billion of the government's money was spent in China. And we know that there are some regions in China, particularly within the Xinjiang province, that people are forced into labour. And there are suggestions that perhaps many of these PPE equipment that was shipped into the UK was manufactured by force, which is why this new law will be brought into act next week.
All right, Juliana, I'm sure by next week we'll have more details on that law and how they hope to implement it. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you at 1:30.
Thank you, Renee.
It's Friday, and normally to be a red one. I just hope that's not the case here. Laddie.
As expected, it is a red Friday today, and it's still fear. Looking at the Fear Greed Index showing the sentiment in the crypto space is at 26 points this morning.
Yeah, I remember yesterday, I think it was 27.
Yeah, it was 27, and now we're back to 26. So there's been that range between, fear, extreme fear, and neutral. We've not gotten to greed yet. It'll be interesting to see greed again in this market. And I'm sure you remember how interesting, extreme greed, was in the market. But we've seen the market cap there having a pullback. It was at 1.9 trillion, but today we're seeing down at 1.59%. The volume traded is up about 16.41%. We've seen a couple of sell-offs with Bitcoin and a couple of altcoins there. And Bitcoin dominance sits at 41.05%. Price of Bitcoin this morning, 40,727. We've seen that range between 38,000 and 41,000 still continue. Traders are looking for direction in this market. Bitcoin is down 1.99%. We saw sell-offs yesterday with global equities market. And now we're seeing volume traded this morning, $36.87 billion. And we see Ethereum is also down 2.14%. So it's mostly red this Friday. Let's bring in Olumide Additional now, financial market analyst. Hello, Olumide. Great to have you.
Yeah, hello, Laddie. Very ready.
Yeah, Yeah, quite a, well, I'll say the week wasn't so interesting, for the crypto market. And now seems rate hikes for the Fed is the main issue right now. We're seeing a pullback with Bitcoin and, major altcoins. How are you seeing the market this week?
Yeah, I think we're not really surprised. If you look at the benchmark narrative has been the hawkish Fed was going to tame down inflation. Now, the United States inflation is almost at 4-decade high, suggesting that the US Fed might take more ammunition to really bring that number down. And that was why the US Fed really spoke the market yesterday. And what we saw was that he highlighted the narrative that they might even increase the interest rate basis points beyond 25 basis points to 50 basis points. And that was why we saw Bitcoin losing $1,500 in a twinkle of hours. Now, it's not just Bitcoin. What we're really seeing is that liquidity in risky assets are going to safe haven assets. And that's why the US dollar is getting strong. That's why gold stocks are getting weak. That's why the crypto market is suffering. So I think my outlook for this week is very bearish. And that's because investors right now would not want to be caught unawares, so they will try to reduce their risky positions. And that definitely the surge of Bitcoin breaking $45,000 resistance level, above resistance level, does not look likely. But we need to also highlight that adoption is increasing. We are seeing good macros. Just today, CZ of Binance disclosed that they've been able to recover about $5.8 million. That was part of the crypto ace from Axie Infinity. Recall that that happened some weeks ago, where about $620 million went underwater. But it just tells you that it's very difficult to launder stolen funds in the crypto market. The crypto market is maturing, but liquidity remains an issue. With the US Fed major concern to tackle inflation, I don't see the crypto market surviving such uproar.
Right, and obviously we see traders spooked, all over the market. But at the end of the day, we have leveraged traders, looking for direction at this point. How are you seeing the shorts? How are the shorts looking, entering the weekend?
The shorts really, they have to really be cautious because, we're talking about liquidity here. So we're not seeing the growing market participants from the buyers and sellers side, just like what we saw in 2021. So this tells you that it's very tricky, but I think the bears have the upper hand. Like you rightly said, they might take in aggressive positions coming to the weekend. But I think the narrative is that we've seen bulls really taking battle at the $40,000 psychology support level. So it will be very tricky to underestimate the bulls, right? Rather than giving the bears the much needed ammunition to break below. But if that really happens, then I think Bitcoin might really have a lot to fight for.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you see the bears having the upper hand and the shorters, accumulating in the market. Then from nowhere you see a candle just come out, and you see Bitcoin, going up, and we see all those shorts, liquidated at this point. But what's your outlook for next week?
Yeah, my outlook for next week is kind of bearish, but I think one of the things I've really seen in the crypto market in 2022 is that the key support level, the $38,000 support, 35, are very, very important. So I think the bulls have been able to fight the battle well, despite the hawkish narrative we've seen in the US Fed. And let's look at the geopolitical uncertainty coming from Ukraine, Russia. If positivity comes from that, maybe that can give the market some respite. We could see positivity back into risky assets. But like the way it's going, it's very difficult to bet against the almighty Fed that is looking at reducing their balance sheet by $1 trillion in 10 months. Radi, yeah. I don't know how the crypto market can.
I know it's quite a tough time, but it is expected. It's been called the year of the squeeze. Thank you so much, Olumide.
Yeah.
All right, now, so looking at the top alts by market cap, we only have eCash there in the green, up about 2.41%. It's majorly red. The BNB down about 2%. Cardano losing that $1 mark, down 2.47%, and XRP at 73 cents. So, it's still begging for direction, right now. We don't know where it's going, but it looks like it's going to be a red weekend.
Yeah, it looks like that. But I think for the second time this week, I heard you and your analysts saying the crypto market is boring, and I never thought I'll hear that.
Well, it is quite, boring. But, at the end of the day, is it wrong for Bitcoin to be stable?
Yes,
price-wise?
Yes, it is.
It shouldn't be wrong.
What's the attraction? If it's stable, what's the attraction? We have stable coins.
Yes, you have stable coins, but
so Bitcoin shouldn't be stable.
It's not bad to have, some days of stability, in the market. The market is actually maturing,
So Bitcoin is just trying to catch its breath. That's what you're trying to say.
Exactly. Very unpredictable market.
Yeah, all right, Ladi, thank you so much. And that's it for the program. But just before we go, I'd like to remind you that Channels Television does not sell, advise, or advertise cryptocurrencies or securities. We do not have a platform where we sell cryptocurrency or advertise it. So if you see anyone, it's not Channels Television. We're just here to report the market. That's what we do on Business Morning. That's it for the program. Tomorrow at 1:30, Business Incorporated will be here to give you updates. From me, have a great weekend. I'm Ini John Mekwa.